Coming to you from a portable microphone, this is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I am in I changed positions. I'm not in the same exact spot on the table, and it's throwing me a little bit. I'm usually sitting like over there and pointing to the corner, but I'm on this side because two reasons. First of all, I don't have a lot of hair, and there's an air-conditioned vent. And second of all, there's some sticky schmutz on the table that is it's not going to work out for us. So Kevin is visiting. Kevin, who is often referred to as a friend of the circus. He's been on the advisory board for a long time. He comes down here and he's very generous with his time. And I got to tell you, he's also generous with his description of his career on LinkedIn. So the way I've been doing this podcast, just a little insight behind the scenes with the podcast. So the way I do this is I'll go on the LinkedIn and I'll download the PDF of the resume. And, you know, a third to 40% of the guests that you've heard on this podcast, they're phoning it in. They're phoning it in, dialing it in, mailing it in. All you see is just, I've worked here, here, and here, and I probably haven't updated it since the 2 jobs ago. Then there's a big chunk of people who they do a pretty good job. I mean, you got your updated resume. It's because they feel like they have to be on LinkedIn. I think we all have felt like we have to, and only now, I think, is LinkedIn starting to show its value. That we can talk about. But Kevin, I think, has embraced the entire LinkedIn phenomenon because you can look at his resume and it takes all the way to page 12 before you start getting to those recommendations. The first page is the summary. Then he's got his job descriptions are taking up pages 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then he's got his honors and awards. Listen, people, I'm not messing around with this. This is Kevin Flatt. This guy is the big deal. He is the big fucking deal. His honors and awards go from page 5 through page 9. Through page 9, he's got on here BMW Films. If you don't know that, do your homework. Has won everything you can win. CA, Effies, AIGA, Adweek, Clio. I'm just going to go through all of the awards because it's just stellar. I feel like I'm getting like just sunburn from the brilliance. I'm not being facetious. Like, this is impressive shit. And you know what? Part of this is perfect that I'm doing this. Perfect that I'm doing this. A gold pencil for self-promo from One Show Interactive. Now, I know that's not for Kevin Flatt, but people, you got to learn from this. If you're not selling yourself, nobody's going to come in one day and say, hey, let's sit down and figure out a way to make you sound good. You got to start doing this, man. You got to flesh out that LinkedIn. Put down all your awards. Porsche, Effies. That's cool. Yeah. Winning Effies for Porsche. BMW Films winning gold pencil, silver pencil, bronze pencil. I do believe that BMW Films was the first ever titanium pencil, because up until that, which arguably created the whole concept of web content, there was nothing for it. They didn't know how to award it. They awarded it. Kevin, as you know, is now the brand director at Minimal. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to welcome him to the podcast. You can look up his resume and his awards online. Thank you so much for coming down. It's good to catch up with you.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you, and thanks for embarrassing me. That
last time I saw you was in a buffet line at the Design Annual, I think at the One Show, or in a hotel. Actually, did I see you?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
at the last year's One Show, and you know, there's something about your personality. There's a openness to it. There's a welcoming and sort of accepting sort of vibe that you give off.
That's nice. Let's
jump straight to the question that I gave you a hint that I was going to ask. What do you think has been something about you that has contributed to what from the outside looks like a successful career? I'll ask you if you feel like you've been successful, but what do you think it is about you that has helped you get to here?
I think that the biggest thing that has helped me is been something that I think I struggled with early on. Was being afraid to fail, being afraid to do something that was stupid or make a mistake. And of course I ended up making mistakes because you do.
Or you do.
You're human. But learning to be okay with those things and how do you address them afterwards, I think is a big deal. But I think over my career, I've become more comfortable with taking risk and trying new things. I've taken jobs that I'm pretty sure that I wasn't fully qualified for.
That's cool.
But I had to learn fast and try to do the best I could to make it work. So if there's anything, I think now I can look back and say I've developed a high level of resilience. And I think I've also learned that being able to adapt is one of the most important things that you can learn. Because if you look back at the industry of the last 20 years, we've been through a monumental sea of change. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to surf that wave. Mm-hmm. Arguably, a lot of my experiences have been a little bit ahead of the curve, doing things before others. Not always successful, but not being afraid to try. And I feel good about that. So it's given me a lot of perspective to know that you may not know everything that you need to know, but if you're willing to give it a shot, then go for it. You can come out on the other side a little smarter and more useful.
So do you think that you had to create and develop resilience?
Trial by fire?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the way people respond to challenges is a big part of who they are as a personality. Right. I find that designers in general are quite introspective, mm-hmm. and advertising creatives in general are extroverts. Mm-hmm. Both of them are wonderful in how they can think through a problem and make it be known. But I've always been calm in the face of craziness, and I don't know why, but it just doesn't faze me as much. And I've been told that by a number of people that I never seem like I'm flappable, but I can guarantee you that inside I'm trying desperately to figure out how can I help fix the situation, or how can I solve it, or how can I look at it differently to help others do it.
Early on, were you calm, or is that something that you've learned over time, that things, we'll find the solution, and there's a sort of a confidence and realization that what's the worst that can happen? I find myself at this stage in my life, my wife would disagree, some mm-hmm. aspects of my life, it's a little bit easier for when curveballs come in that are real surprises, mm-hmm. because I kind of have faith that doesn't seem as intensely horrible as maybe it did years ago. Is that a truth with you?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that when you're younger and some bad things happen or something goes wrong, it's the end of the world.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because it's more the latter. It's not necessarily something bad happened. Something went wrong because you thought it was going to go this way, and the client completely changed it, and that was a crisis in the first 5 years of your career.
Oh, absolutely. Your self-value is completely destroyed, and
all the work we did.
The work that we did is useless now, right. And I put my entire life into that thing. I gave up all my weekends for that thing, and it's huge. But I had somebody tell me one time that I've always appreciated, is that when you're on your first birthday, 1 year is your entire life.
Right, that's right.
And by the time you're 10, it's 1/10 of your life. Mm-hmm. And as you get older, it keeps getting smaller and smaller. And I think that with more and more experience, it's the same thing. It's like the crisis or the challenge or the failure seems a lot less big of a deal because you've had a number of them, and you know that you can survive this. And if you're smart about it, you can say, okay, great. That ended that thing, and now we can do something completely different. And I don't have to get hung up on trying to hold on to that. I mean, people often do, and a lot of times you hold on to those ideas and wish you could have got them done. But if you can just get past it and say, let's do something completely different. I've had some of my best ideas have been the result of a total failure right before that. Mm-hmm. And over time I've learned to appreciate that's a gift if you can actually see that failure is an opportunity and go about it new.
Right. I don't know if the listeners heard me inhale while you were speaking just then. You took literally the words I was going to say, because I don't believe that a young person sees that as any kind of opportunity whatsoever. And I think that it can be if you approach it that way.
Right.
Because I very specifically remember a time where we had the campaign and it was killed by the CEO, even though the client loved it that we were presenting to internally. And I know we struggled to like take that shirt off and put a new, we didn't want to do it. We kept coming back with it redesigned, rephrased slightly.
Yeah.
And it was just so stupid. It was so immature. And this was not my first job. And what we ended up doing was good, but I think we could have done something great if we had had that mentality of this is a chance to actually do something even fresher, even newer.
Well, what I think is great for any young person is I actually appreciate the passion. I love the fact that they think the world's coming to end over this thing.
Right.
Because that's actually what makes them drive to do really, really great work. Right. So I don't think that, that's a bad trait. That's a good trait.
Yeah.
But with a little bit of patience and breathing techniques, they can actually get beyond that moment. But when it comes to like getting feedback,
for real breathing techniques,
deep breathing techniques. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to getting feedback from a client or from your boss or whatever, I actually prefer sometimes, not always, but most times, that it's on the ends of the spectrum. It's either total success or a complete failure.
Interesting.
Because when it's somewhere in the middle, you never quite know if it's worth spending more time on or giving up on.
Yeah.
And too often you fall in love with your thing and you try so hard to keep it going, even though it probably should have died, but you just don't know.
Right. And at that point, improvements or tweaks, they're marginal. They're not significant improvements.
Yeah. It can help, but it doesn't always solve it.
Yeah. All right, I want to go back for a second to what you said a couple minutes ago about how designers and advertising folks will approach the solution to a problem differently, right? Talk a little bit about that, because one of the struggles that I have, not struggles, but realities that I have is in this job at the Creative Circus is kind of defining how you approach the process from a design versus an art direction standpoint. And sometimes people come into the program not knowing the difference or not knowing what they want to be or what they want to do. So how would you say, how would you, based on what you've seen, and you have experience on both tracks, right? So what's the difference between an advertising mindset solution versus design, and what's the difference between just beyond introvert versus extrovert? How does it differ? How do you define the difference?
Well, so Rob taught me a long time ago that Rob Lawton, yes, taught me a long time ago that as an advertising creative, you have to be comfortable with the fact that your print ad may be on the bottom of a bird cage tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So it's always a short-term temporary solution that can be disposable as a piece of paper, as an execution, as a thing. But the idea is what actually can live further. And if you can turn that idea into a platform, well, then it's even more powerful. So some of the best work that's done is based off of a clear understanding of the brand's purpose and a platform that helps support that. So then it's just a matter of looking at, what are the places where we can engage with customers and make a difference. Designers tend to end up doing things that are physical and may have a little bit more length of time that it's with somebody. Logos don't get changed every day. Normally they stay figured out and last for as long as they can if they're done right. Mm-hmm. Unless they're a dynamic logo like Burton or something, or Google.
Interesting.
But they also do packaging and things that you hold in your hand, and that gets expensive because it's manufacturing now. And so you don't want to be doing that all the time because it costs money. So you got to figure that stuff out and make it work. Advertising is heavy in the messaging, heavy in the communication, heavy in trying to actually create an opportunity for somebody to engage into the brand. And, with the right message and the right, values that it's sharing about the brand, people can fall in love with the brand, off of that. I think that designers and, I know there's always a question about designers versus art directors. In my view, they should be the same thing. It's just that they're actually executing in a particular medium.
That's really interesting.
And I laugh about it because when I was at Fallon, at one point I was heading up the interactive group. And so I had, because it was born out of Duffy, most of the people working on it were designers.
Mm-hmm. Duffy Design.
And, but most of the stuff that we were doing was crossing over into, all worlds, including advertising, including online and others. But I found that there was a little bit of a challenge when somebody would walk in the room like, oh, he's a designer versus he's an art director. Like somehow they weren't seen as the same skill set or the same thinker. So I changed all their titles to art director, but they were designers. Yeah. So I don't see a difference in it. People try to make differences in them. I would argue that the best art directors know the craft of communicating visually really well. And the best designers know the craft of communicating visually very well. They just tend to do it in different touch points.
Interesting.
I'm not a fan of art directors who say, I just come up with the ideas. Yeah. And it's like, well, you're not an art director. You're not directing art. You're not actually doing art. You're concepting, and that's great. And that's what you should be doing. But you can actually be better at creating things when you understand the craft and the medium by which you're communicating through. If you're going to do TV, you got to know TV. If you're going to do some things in paper, you got to know how printing works. If you're going to do things physically in plastic or virtually in pixels, you got to know how those things work. You got to know your craft to be able to communicate in the medium of your choice.
That's all the design part. All right, so listeners don't know because I cut myself off when I forgot the question, but now I remember what it was.
Okay.
So a minute ago, before that was a very interesting answer, by the way. I'm going to let it sit for 1 second. The idea that a designer and an art director are solving problems that are similar, or they're doing it in different channels. I think that's really interesting. And often not. Often whatever channel needs to be done is done by either one. You're talking about loving to see the passion and sort of the frustration and anger of some almost tears when something fails. And this isn't a question. I just wanted to say this on the podcast. So my son and I were talking last night about the DPs in Major League Soccer. So Major League Soccer has these players that are allowed to be signed. They're usually washed up or barely over the hill international superstars are coming over here to finish their careers. And most of them are phoning it in. Some of them are okay. But Davi Villa, who plays for New York City FC, argues with the referees. Like, he gets in their face. And I said, I love this guy because he's coming over here after winning everything you can win in Spain and wants to win games and cares. And I'd rather have him on my team, even though you can look at a guy, one of the other guys might be more skilled, but kind of seems like he's here to cash out. And I just don't think, one of the things that you'd gone through a list of traits that you think are important in hires. And there were three that I think are extremely important, right? You said curiosity, which I've talked about at length on the podcast. Craftsmanship, we talked a little bit, just Sid did. You can't be an art director who can't design.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know your craft.
What's your craft at that point? You might as well be the client. And character. And character is a huge one. I think character contains the passion, contains the heart, right?
Yeah.
You were talking, I think, about not being a dick.
Well, that's a part of it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, so the other part of character that I always love, and this was something that I helped refine describing it when I was at Burnett. And we were trying to help define what makes for a good Burnetter. You know, what does that? And at that point, we talked about specifically around this, about the heart of a champion. And what I love about that is that the people that you want are the ones that have heart, that have passion, that they're willing to take a bullet for you and willing to take a bullet for an idea, that they're willing to fight the fight and do it with conviction, because those are the ones that actually make things happen. And that's not just, on the agency side or the studio side. That's on the client side too. Mm-hmm. Like, an agency can come up with amazing things that could help a client's business, immensely. But if the client doesn't believe it does, then it's useless.
Right.
And a lot of the best things that I've ever been a part of were not just the result of great thinking by some very creative minds, but the fact that there was a client who was a champion for those ideas and willing to go through all the battles that he'd have to politically and financially and culturally to make those things happen. And at the same time, when clients disagree with you or don't believe in you, it's helpful to have somebody, within the agency, within the studio, not willing to just give in and take that, but actually fight for the idea or fight for the person. I always encourage when somebody does something great in a meeting to sit there and say, that was great, and explain to everybody else why it was great.
That's awesome.
Because if you point out the good behavior, other people will emulate it.
That's really cool.
And if there's bad behavior, well, don't be a dick.
Right. No, that's really cool. I worked for it with championing as a verb. I think that's really interesting because my very first job, we had an account guy named Tom Barreca. I hadn't thought of him till right now, who the best work we did at that agency at Ogilvy, my first job, was a campaign where he came down to our office the day before we were going to present and said, they are so fired up to see this work. I'm like, why? He goes, I told him it's amazing. Like, I'm so excited. I'm so pumped to present it. We went into this meeting. It was sold first word because Tom had looked at the stuff we were going to show and gone to the client and said, we're going to have so much fun tomorrow with this presentation. And I remember turning to my partner, John, thinking, man, this guy's not going to stay in advertising very long. It's so hard to find. And I know you guys we don't talk about that. You guys don't have account executives. You don't have project managers.
Yeah,
but to find an account executive who had the love of the creative and the political sort of savvy acumen to work with clients, that skill set they're so abused in advertising that they deserve a better life. And I think Tom moved on to something better. But how does it work? I do want to get to some questions about you, but now that we're talking about account executives, if you personally and have the designers and the UX guys and the industrial designers that work with and under you, have they had to learn new skills to be able to manage client communication and client language, budgets, hiring suppliers, that kind of stuff? How has that worked? And has that been a difficult, painful thing? Or talk about it.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating for me in a number of ways. First off, I'm married to an account director. In fact, my wife actually heads up an agency now in Chicago.
What is it?
McGarry Bowen.
Great.
She's the president of McGarry Bowen in Chicago.
Great.
And she has more than earned that through her years. She's an amazing person that I've learned from a lot. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to have her ear whenever I need it.
It's great.
But she has had a long history of helping to manage very challenging clients that have high demands and not only make it possible for good ideas to be seen and heard appropriately, but to also wrangle, a creative team into actually understanding, what the problem is.
The problem,
and where this idea could go wrong if they don't listen.
Yeah, let me say about the problem, because there's three problems you're dealing with normally. You're dealing with the problem that the brand has in how it's perceived. So it's a communication problem. You're dealing with a problem that the brand has in its market, the brand's business problem. And you're dealing with the problem that your client, the human being, has internally.
Yep.
And those three have to somehow exist. The solutions have to solve all three of those problems. Yes. And that's the three that I can think of.
Yeah, there's probably a lot more too. But you're right. It is not an easy game, and so getting a good champion on your team to help make that happen is amazing. At Minimal, when I joined, it was very different than the normal agency, studio world. Is that it was very direct. That every designer works directly with the client and handles it.
It's really empowering for them. I would think it's a great place to work.
Well, there's some other places that do this, and it's not too far from some of the experience that I had at Duffy and at Fallon. Because at Fallon, it was very much the clients knew the creatives that were working on things. There was not like an account person in between all the time. It was very direct, and so that kind of relationship actually benefits because the more you understand the client that you're working with, the more you understand how to create ideas that work for them and how to actually talk to them and listen to them. At Minimal, what amazed me when I got there was how good everybody was at managing those things.
That's great.
They were not shy or challenged by not only talking about the work, but also addressing issues and thinking through things. And in doing product design and brand incubation, you're dealing with a lot more than just here's the campaign or here's the poster. Right. You're dealing with business problems.
Right.
You're dealing with the cost of goods to manufacture.
Right.
You're dealing with how am I going to get into a retail environment or should I? You're dealing with real business problems
really fun.
because it fundamentally affects what it is that you're making. And so I was just like, holy, like this is a lot more than I ever would have seen in the world that I'd been in. So right off the bat, I'm going in as obviously somebody who's spent, a lot of time and becoming smart in communication, but was not familiar with how products get made. And I was in school. I've been in school since the day I started there. In fact, I had thought about.
That's cool.
I had thought about going to get an MBA in design thinking, and when I was talking to Scott Wilson, who started Minimal, and he's a leader there, he said, "Oh, you can go to school, or you can just come work here,
Right.
You'll learn the same thing, if not a lot more."
Right, that's fascinating. Because I'm wondering what that would be. I mean, what are you learning in that kind of MBA? Is it system design and process? I mean, I don't want to get too into that, but it'd be interesting.
It's the best way that I can describe it is that you're learning how to design.
Right, you're learning. Okay, so a lot of it is design of process, design of how to think, how to approach a problem.
Yes.
All right. So, what are you now? Are you a creator? Do you think of yourself as a communicator or a manager? What's your role now at Minimal?
Well, because we're a small place and everybody wears multiple hats and does a lot of things, every day it's a combination of all those things.
You getting to make?
I get to make.
That's great.
And everybody makes. That's one of the things about Minimal is that nobody sits back and just watches or just talks.
Have you had a time in your career? Sorry to interrupt. Have you had a time in your career when you were not making as much as you wished you were?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that I felt like, is difficult for people that like to make. But I made a choice in learning to become, a creative leader, that you have to become satisfied with other people's success. Mm-hmm. And, helping them do their job better is actually a good reflection on what you're capable of doing. And if you're able to actually put together a department or a group of people and design a group that can do things, then that's one form of doing it.
Do you think that's a strength of yours, the talent scouting, talent recruiting, knowing who's good? Is that something you're good at, something you have help with?
I've had some good success in it. I don't know if I'm like awesome at it, but I've had some places that I've been able to like change by changing the mindset and changing some of the staff. But I haven't been able to do that perfectly in every place that I've been because sometimes it's just not the right culture or not the right goal.
Interesting. But just curious, really. I mean, so talk to me about. I highlighted words out of your self-written bio, which I think is very well written.
Thank you, but this sounds painful.
You're scared a bit. So, bravery matters. You said, right? Bravery matters. Bravery to present something embarrassing. Bravery to take risks. How should someone approaching their first job in the industry or someone who's starting their career think about being brave without burning the foundation of their sort of first job? I mean, what does bravery mean? Like, what does that even mean?
Well, I think along the lines of what I mentioned before is that it's not being afraid to fail. It's recognizing that you're going to do it. You're going to do some things that are interesting. You're going to do some things that are like arguably dumb, but you have to be able to recognize that your passion for doing it and your drive for doing it and the ability to get back up and do it again is important. To stand tall in the face of adversity.
It's a difference between being a creative person and being a professional creative, I think. And I go back to this soccer thing because I just listened to interviews yesterday and talking about heart of a champion. I heard something differently when you said that, which was back to David Villa. They lost 7-0 to New York Red Bulls across town, and then they went on a run right after that and ended up being top of the Eastern Conference. And they had an interview with Jordan Morris I was listening to yesterday, who's like one of the youngest players to play in the league, and he could have gone to Europe. He's 21 years old, superstar. And they said, the question was asked to him, like, what's the most pragmatic advice you've heard from somebody? And he said that Clint Dempsey had told him that when you have a bad game, there's another game for you to go out and do the things you know you can do. Mm-hmm. Like, you can do this. You're here for a reason. Yep. And there's tomorrow for you to prove that.
Right.
And this is the theme of this conversation is resilience, but I think I'm hammering it because I feel like I didn't have that early on, and I think a lot of people kind of feel like it's easy in school. It's going to be the same thing. It's not. You're going to lose. You will lose. You cannot win every week.
Right.
You can't do it. Just know that that's what it's going to rain.
Right.
Have an umbrella with you.
Right. You've said it. The way looking back at it, the way I understand it is that I kept thinking all throughout my education that, it'll be better when I get to, high school. Or, it'll be better when I get to college. Or, it's going to be better when I get out and get my first job. And it's always going to be better. And you keep thinking like all the challenges that you're going to face just kind of just go away because it's going to be better. And it's like, no, you're always going to have challenges, and half of them you're not going to know that they're coming.
That's right.
So get comfortable with that and be willing to keep fighting, to keep the passion and not let it bother you.
Right. All right, let's change subjects completely. So on your bio, it lists that you have had the honor and privilege to judge Cannes, the One Show, CA, the Webbies, other competitions. You're a frequent speaker. Mm-hmm. You're on the One Club. I think you're on the One Club board, right?
I've been a part of that, at least judging. But
okay, judging.
Yeah.
So, what do you enjoy coming down here doing these talks? What do you get out of judging? What is that? What kind of itch does that scratch for you? What do you get out of those things personally?
Well, I think when I was doing a lot of judging, I don't do it as much anymore. But when I was doing a lot of judging, what I loved was seeing amazing work. It gives you a chance to sit down and actually just look, take some time and look at some of the stuff that's going on all around. And it's kind of like being a student in a sense of that you're getting to see what else is going on and maybe learn something from it. But at the same time, I always feel like it's wonderful to try to help highlight or give credit to the work that people should notice and pay attention to. I also enjoyed the other judges that I got a chance to judge with. A lot of those turned into friends, and some of them turned into bosses.
That's cool.
So
you can prove your intelligence in a room full of smart people. I'm not saying that as an ego-stroking thing. It's true. It's like you get to interface with some really cool people.
They are really smart people. Yeah. That's why they're in there doing it. Yeah. And I can say that there's been a lot of people that I've talked to and been around in that. And I'm not going to try to pick out favorites, but one of the guys that I've always enjoyed being around was Bob Greenberg. And he's one of the most lovable, funny, guys I can imagine. But
authentic,
incredibly smart, and very authentic. And to give him further props, just because I'm such a fan of his, he's the reason why Fallon got the titanium for BMW Films. He was the one that went and talked to the committee and said, because the work got tossed out of the advertising because it didn't fit, but it did really well in the cyber lines at the time, and he was the champion who went in and had the conversation to say, we're not giving this campaign enough attention because this is not what everybody's been doing. This is totally different.
It's really cool.
And so he told me about that, and I just I didn't know, and I thought that was just amazing that he would do that.
Let me say about him, one of the things you said about yourself early on, besides resilience, was you said, I don't know how to say adaptability, able to adapt. Nobody has adapted better than RGA and Rob Greenberg.
Yeah.
They weren't even in this universe. They created a lot of this universe. With Nike Plus, right? They're Nike Plus. And they were a house that made post-production animation, and then they adapted to the industry with the industry. So, knowing what you know now, you go back in time to the day you graduated from East Texas State. What would you whisper in young Kevin's ear?
Well, it would be easy to say, "Don't be afraid," but I think the biggest thing that I needed to learn when I was really young was...
and you were very young.
Yeah. It would be just to lighten up and relax and enjoy the ride. I was very intense. And
You're a tough guy to be around.
Could be. In fact, one of the best things that ever happened to me was I had some people at Fallon that decided to invest in me and help me with a coach that helped me kind of see how this works when you're working with other people and not just doing things by yourself.
That's awesome.
And I couldn't thank them enough for how much they were willing to invest in my future. But yeah, I think that last piece about character, I've always had, certain, moral beliefs and values that I stand for. But I also learned a lot about how to appreciate others and work with them in a way that makes it fun for everybody.
It's really cool. It's very profound. It's, very, very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And listeners, thank you for listening. If you want to get a hold of Kevin, he has an email. He's actually generously shared an email address, kevin@minimal.com, which is MNML.com. You can always reach me at danspodcast@mac.com. Make sure you like the Facebook page. I should have said that at the beginning. Oh, I think after all these years, I would know how to do this thing. Facebook.com/DGMS podcast. Podcast is also available on iTunes. Leave a review if you enjoy the show. And if you've gotten this far, you obviously haven't given up on it. Thank you so much for listening. Kevin, thanks again so much for doing this.
Thank you. It was great.
I really enjoyed the talk. Listeners, I hope you did too. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Till then, see you. Bye.